They have very beautiful stories together. She's like, look, with this flying, it's really difficult and people speak, and can we not find a way to stop it? And he's like, okay, every time you take the body of Christ, every time you take the bread there in the Mass, you fly. But you eat too much of the bread. You take the whole bread and you eat it too quickly. Have half. Let's try with half. Okay, so she cuts the bread, she eats half the bread. Nevertheless, she levitates. So this is the poem of St. Teresa of Avila, Nothing but God. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. Though all things pass, God doesn't change. Patience wins all things, but he lacks nothing who possesses God, for God alone is enough. I guess if you are here watching, you have a certain longing for experiencing the spiritual world, a certain hunger for experiencing elevated states of consciousness, and perhaps also a bit of fear, a bit of anxiety, worry, uncertainty regarding these states. You would probably be happy to have a divine vision, to see a divine apparition of Christ, of God, of a divinity that you believe in. But it might also be very confusing and difficult. How do you integrate such an experience in your life? What do you do with it? And the life of Saint Therese and her literature, the books that she wrote, and her living testimony of spirit, they are like a hand, a very big but soft and humble hand that's reaching out from a few hundred years ago and says, here, it's safe. That's how you do it. If you want to enter the mystical path of the heart, the mystical path of divine love, her life, her books are one of the best detailed guides ever written, in my opinion and the opinion of many people much greater. Her life supplies with very, very detailed information how a person confused, guilty, worried, but sweet and with aspiration and with love was able to navigate from the very first steps of the spiritual path. Extraordinary in aspiration is true from childhood, but was able to go through all that and reach the highest mansion, the highest accomplishments of spirituality, reach really the peaks of spiritual states, and is described in such a human, humble, even humoristic ways here and there. So let us dive in. Teresa, born 1515 in the end of March and passed away either today on the 15th of October or on the 4th of October. There were a few centuries. I guess you can understand why such confusions can appear. Her childhood, already as a little child, she had a lot of aspiration. She heard about the lives of saints, and she took her brother and she decided that they're going to go together and be martyrs. And they went all the way. They were very small. They got all the way to the edge of the village. They said, we're going to the heathens and have them chop off our heads for Christ. And they were walking there, and somebody found them in the edge of the village and brought them back home. But already she had that fire as a child. She was very, very close to her mother, and the mother died when she was 11, which triggered a great suffering, but also a great devotion to Virgin Mary, which will stay very, very close to her in her life. She does become a rebel. It's not characteristic. Not all saints have become rebels. St. Augustine was one heck of a rebel, but many of them lived kind of virtuous. I don't know, St. Vincent, St. Patrick, very virtuous life, A to Z, from moment of birth to moment of death. St. Teresa, She was a rebellious teenager. It's not clear what she's done. She apologizes 100 times in the book, but you don't know what she's actually apologizing about. But she apologizes, and her father apparently got angry that she's so rebellious and puts her in a convent, which was the Carmelite convent that she went to was much more of a social thing. It was a school. It wasn't so harsh with the rules. There was many people coming and going. There was a lot of socializing going on. And then she decides, you know what? I like it. I'm not returning. And her father was very angry. But now she got the taste of it. She got the taste of a religious life, and she chose to dedicate her life for the inner life, for Christ, for God. She becomes very sick. She has malaria and she's about to die. So they take her home to die. And she probably has a near-death experience, which has a pretty impactful effect on her. It's not very clear, but she was there in between. And then she has a strange paralysis for 3 years. She actually recalls seeing another sister very sick and asking to have patience in disease like the sister. And then she says, oh, God granted my wish. I got very sick for 3 years. I couldn't get out of bed. After 3 years, she learned to crawl and could go to whatever kind of toilet they had there. And to wherever she needs, she was crawling, and gradually she got better, but she bore all that with patience, and it actually built in her a certain strength and aspirations. Her prayers go deeper, and they start to bring her in all sorts of mystical states. Everybody in the convent are praying, they pray together, they pray in their room, they pray in solitude. And, you know, they have nice, if you ever prayed, it feels very nice. You feel warm in your heart, you feel emotionally purified, you feel quiet, you feel at peace with God. Sometimes there's like an embracing presence, and it's very nice. And she had all these things and mega visions, apparitions of Christ, apparitions of light coming out of her body, and so forth. Later on, she levitates, all sorts of things would occur. And she was pretty confused, as I'm sure you and I would also be pretty confused. So she goes to her confessors in the Carmelite monastery where she was, in the Carmelite convent, and they tell her, dear Teresa, the visions are from the devil. Whatever it is that got you to the visions, don't do it. So she stopped her contemplative prayer. She stopped her mental prayer. And she would kind of pray with everyone. She says, I almost completely stopped because I was scared. But, you know, it's like a baby with a mother's breast. From time to time, I would pray. I couldn't help it. And she would get a little bit of honey from God. But they told her, and she was afraid. And it's not... they didn't have like a whole bunch of spiritual books and a whole bunch of spiritual education. They would have the Bible, sometimes only the New Testament, a little bit of books here and there, and they trusted their confessors. So years went by like this. When she's 39, she meets a Jesuit priest. So she was with the Carmelites, that's founded around the 12th, 13th century in Israel with the Crusades, and then brought later back to Europe and Spain. She's found somebody from another current of Catholicism, a Jesuit, who spoke to her about her visions. Says, no, my dear, they are visions from God. Now, how did he know? And this is very important. This is the lesson that repeats. This is the principle that repeats in her book. How do you know if a vision is real or not? How do you feel after? She says, look, you are so peaceful, you're clear, you're detached, you're loving, you're awakening virtues such as humility, kindness, patience, you're level-headed. Your visions are real. Yeah, if you have a vision and you see light and after that you get all greedy, all aggressive, all proud, all confused, probably not. Not a good vision. But if the visions make you very down to earth, very quiet, very peaceful, loving, simple, very good. So she starts at the age of 39, she starts praying full power again, and that's it. Nobody will stop her until the end of her life at 67. This is when Teresa puts the next gear in her spiritual life, and nobody and nothing will stop her. Now, she would levitate in prayer sometimes when she would have the prayer of rapture. We'll speak about the mechanism a little later. Especially when she would receive the body of Christ. Now, as she would levitate, she was very concerned. The times are the times of the Spanish Inquisition. She's a woman. Some people say the visions are from the devil. She levitates. She's a woman. The devil, a witch, burn her, so forth. So that was a possible scenario. Yeah. She doesn't mention it in the book, of course. She will not say, oh, the Inquisition will kill me, because you can imagine what would happen to that book and to her if she would write it. The Inquisition did forbid the spreading of her book while she was alive, and it only came out after. So she gets scared, and she asks her sisters, when she levitates, she says, okay, we'll do like this. When I feel it coming, because she could feel the rapture coming, I'm going to lie on the ground, and then you all come and sit on me. It's a little bit like a nun's rugby. Yeah, you've seen rugby, how they are? Yeah, because if somebody from the outside sees and has some bad ideas and makes some bad connections, it might be super, super dangerous. She tries to hide her spiritual states, but a lot of words come out, and the whole city of Avila enters a pro-con Teresa in that time. She has a vision of Jesus Christ, and he tells her very specifically, open a convent, you call it St.Joseph, you open it over there, that would be the place. And it needs to be done in a very, very specific way where we'll pass the old rules of Christianity, like the Desert Fathers in Egypt and in Israel in the 3rd, 4th century. You will no longer be rich little nuns. You will live only on alms, only on donations. And you're going to keep silent and not socialize so much. And it will be a small convent, 13 people, 12 people. And you will keep the Christian fast, a kind of veganism. And you will live a much more strict but heartful life. So she received that vision, and the vision was Christ, and she knew it was Christ, and by then she had a different confessor, and so forth. And she says, I'm going to start a new convent. And what opposition! The entire city was against this. She just wanted to start a convent with 13 people. Descalzat, the barefoot. They would wear sandals, but it was a symbolic barefoot. So this is the hardest period of her life. She goes through all sorts of difficulties, and again, she doesn't speak explicitly in her autobiography that she thought maybe somebody will kill her, but I'm pretty certain that it was in the air and it was a possibility. And she goes through a lot of slander. And the great saint, Pedro de Alcantara, the great Portuguese saint, who was the confessor of the queen and so forth, he was a great saint and very respected, great ascetic, one of the greatest Christian saints and mystics of humanity. He comes and he talks to her, and he tells to everyone, she's the real thing. She's not an ordinary nun having here and there some visions. This is your new mother. This is a real living saint that you have here. And with his power, she's able to start the monastery. He dies in the process. She passes away before, and she's almost about to give up. And there's a court case, and she's about to give up. And in the process, she sees a vision of him, and he tells her, hey, I told you not to give up. You open the monastery. The fact that so many demons are fighting this new monastery, it shows how good it's going to be. The bigger the opposition, the better your work. You trust me, I take care of you here from heaven. This will be successful. And in the end of the vision, he tells her, by the way, heaven is great. I am so happy here. Very, very happy. Like really, being a saint was a very, very good choice. So after some years, in 1562, she opens the monastery, the convent of St.Joseph, which still exists until today. They live on alms. They would be in silence a lot of the time. They would live with great love, great aspiration, intense prayer, and this emphasis on inner transformation, not a social conformity monastery, but a monastery of a burning longing and inner transformation. She settles, she's happy in the monastery, she gets another vision, starts another one, again trouble, starts another one, again she relaxes, she says, oh, and I felt so peaceful, and I received another vision to make another one. She makes 14 in her life, and one of them for, at least one of them for men, in which the great Saint John of the Cross is the member and the head of the monastery. He's younger than her. So Pedro de Alcantara was older and somehow fatherly role to her. And then St. John of the Cross is younger, and he comes and he sees her and she gives him a lot of instructions, but he grows very, very fast. And eventually he becomes her confessor. And they have very beautiful stories together. She's like, look, with this flying, it's really difficult and people speak, and can we not find a way to stop it? And he's like, okay, every time you take the body of Christ, every time you take the bread there in the Mass, you fly. But you eat too much of the bread. You take the whole bread and you eat it too quickly. Have half. Let's try with half. Okay, so she cuts the bread, she eats half the bread. Nevertheless, she levitates. And they try to figure out together modes. They would be found together in prayer, leaning on each other, and both of them with their chairs levitating a little bit in the air. They would enter often spiritual ecstasy together. Try to understand, to put yourself in the shoes of these people. You see Christ, you see God, you care for nothing of this world, nothing, nothing. If you read her book, it's very clear, and his books even more. The Dark Night of the Soul of St. John of the Cross is definitely a person that doesn't want anything from this world and is constantly in crushing like waves onto God. But you are the only one. All the others, your students, your enemies, they don't. Your world is so lonely, in a way, because you have nobody to talk to that understands what you are going through. And then they have each other. First Pedro de Alcantara and Teresa of Avila, and then St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. They have each other. And the spiritual love between them is extraordinary. St. John of the Cross, as he was ascending on this path, he was very much worshipping the formless God. He said, I had enough of visions in my life. I want to go beyond the visions, beyond the mind, beyond the known, into the supreme unknown reality of the Absolute. And he realized something is holding him back, something is holding him back, and he didn't know what. And then he realized that he's attached to Teresa, that he loves her so much. So he took all the letters that she sent him and he burned them. And somehow releasing himself from his final attachment to this world. It's a shame, because it would have been nice to see today what was in those letters, but that was his cracking open and becoming free from this world.
Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra, and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.